So now moving on to a rather more modern maritime helicopter in this instance, coming from historic helicopters, the stable of Andrew Whitehead down at Chard, and he has very kindly provided this aircraft for us here today. Something that was very, very familiar indeed around the shores of Great Britain several decades ago. Certainly I remember as a kid sitting on the beach playing with my parents and waving to the search and rescue helicopters that often used to just come and provide an extra bit of fun to the afternoon. So Andrew Whitehouse has done the most fantastic job at Chard, collecting an extraordinary number of historic heritage aircraft, supporting frequently the Navy Wings operation at the same time. He's got 6 airworthy Sea Kings, 2 Royal Air Force yellow search and rescue ones, as you can see here, a HAR3, and 2 ex-Belgian Air Force search and rescue ones, and also 2 Mark IV, what we call jungly commander ones. Also along in his stable is a Wessex, a Lynx, and a Whirlwind as well. British license-built version of the American Sikorsky S-61 helicopter of the same name, built by Westland Helicopters. The aircraft differs considerably from the American version with the Rolls-Royce Gnome engines. They were derived from a General Electric version. And of course equipped with British-made anti-submarine warfare systems and a fully computerized flight control system. Primarily designed for performing anti-submarine warfare missions, the Sea King variant was adopted by Westland as a troop transport known as the Commando, which of course we refer to as the Junglies. Going to put it through a variety of roll demonstrations, as would normally have been conducted by the Royal Air Force or the Royal Navy, depending which configuration you happen to have seen in the day. They led the way, this particular variation, the HAR3 and 3As, with the addition of a Fleur turret in the very early 2000s, which was a real game changer in search and rescue, giving the capability to see ahead in the water and in the dark of up to about 200 meters away. Many rescues featured and recorded. The aircraft in the hands today of Michael Malrick Smith, himself a hugely well-known, experienced and expert helicopter pilot. Spent many years in the Royal Navy himself before getting involved with Castle Air, and that led him into an extraordinary amount of film and television production work, which he's still very much immersed. Colourful character, and has made a major contribution to aviation in so many different ways. In addition to the search and rescue fit, the fuselage could always take 17 seated casualties and 2 stretchers as well. Some of you will be familiar with the Royal Air Force search and rescue flight at Chivenor, which covered this area, Paynton and Tor Bay, as part of their patch, and have completed rescues on the cliffs at the north of the bay by the co-pilot who's flying here today, and that, of course, is Jonathan Evans. So thank you so much for that. However, you can't operate this on your own without the assistance of very, very competent and professional rear crew as well, and the commitment and dedication that goes into keeping these aircraft airborne, although in the hands and generosity of Andrew Whitehouse himself, the owner of historic helicopters, the addition of supporters and volunteers, but particularly those perhaps more unsung in today's case being Chris Page and Paul Middlehurst, who you will see some action provided by them when they start doing some winching drills and also dropping a flag as well. Chris is a serving engineer who was pivotal to the transfer of ownership and continuing airworthiness from the MOD to historic helicopters. And Paul himself is also an ex-Royal Navy air crewman and experienced Sea King operator. John is in the left-hand seat today, as I mentioned, well over 10,000 hours as an RAF helicopter pilot and instructor. First flew the Sea King back in 2001 and then spent 13 years as a search and rescue pilot as well, and was part of the crews based out at Chivenna, conducting many rescues in and around the Torbay area. So they now see the crew coming into action, hanging from the strop, doing a few aerobatics himself on the end of there. And I'm not sure whether this one is still has it fitted, but many of the Sea Kings had a little, just a tiny little control in the back, so the rear crew operators were able to just get about 10% worth of the maneuverability of the aircraft in their own hands, just to do those final adjustments. You can imagine what it must be like. It's a beautiful day here today, flat, calm sea. But of course, most incidents happen in the worst of weathers, and the courage, skill and bravery of these guys must be recognized in terms of the environments they went into. Heaving seas, dark, cold, gale force winds, not just at sea, but of course in the mountains as well, where they did equally remarkable work. Search roles, the Sea Kings were able to operate to precise navigational standards, fitted with a multi-band homing system, satellite nav systems, a search radar and a comprehensive avionics suite, and a large section of radios as well. Equipped with a hydraulically operated main rescue hoist, an electrically operated emergency rescue hoist, and electrical connections as well for all the medical equipment that was required to be carried on board. I mentioned the video and infrared detection pod, which was a real game changer to the capability of this aircraft, and very similar to that used by police helicopters subsequently. All SAR crews were also trained to operate using night vision goggles over unfamiliar terrain. And the rear crew were also doubling up, being trained as paramedics to supply immediate first aid and recovery services immediately at the rescue site before handing over to other supporting forces. Rolls-Royce gnome turboshafts providing around 1,300 horsepower each. Maximum speed is a bit chunky aircraft, this quite heavy. Giving a maximum speed of about 125 knots and able to fly up to 10,000 feet. Following this maneuver, repositioning maneuver by Michael, who's captain of the aircraft today. You see a couple of little S-turns down the fly line before their final farewell, which I know will be very pleasing to the eye. I mentioned yellow already today. We've seen one aircraft. We're going to see another yellow aircraft later on as well. A very high conspicuity color. Unlike its other version in the Commando, obviously being more camouflaged, the grey. Modern aircraft very tricky to see against both the sea and the sky. Repositioning now, coming into a steadier speed. Keep your eyes peeled. And you see now, just being deployed on its farewell towards the end of its display here now, the Royal Air Force ensign being deployed from the venerable HAR3A Sea King. Sea Kings were involved in a range of services across both the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, as well as wartime roles in the Falklands War, the Gulf War, the Falklands conflict, the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War. The Sea King, perhaps the most well-known in its capacity in the search and rescue role. Red and grey with the Navy, and as you see today, yellow livery with the Royal Air Force. Of course, also adopted in the more strategic role of being an airborne early warning platform. This particular aircraft, 597, was one of a small number of Sea Kings to be painted also temporarily dark sea grey for their duty in post-war Falkland Islands activities. Joined historic helicopters and Andrew Whitehouse's team there, as another iconic aircraft for the flight, being re-registered with the CAA as GSKNG for Sea King. Featured notably in the Sunday evening drama on BBC One, Vigil, and her partnership also featured in the Apple TV film. So here on his farewell tour, you know what to do, boys and girls, mums and dads. Give the crew a massive, great wave, all working very hard to entertain us here during the course of the afternoon. Our grateful thanks to Michael Malik Smith at the controls, Jonathan Evans alongside him, and in the back providing us with additional entertainment with the winching and the flag now going back in the cockpit, aided by Chris Page and Paul Middlehurst. And our grateful thanks to Andrew Whitehouse and Historic Helicopters across in Somerset. And there, another farewell nod from Michael and Jonathan up front. Concluding a really excellent demonstration, and so good to see that back after many, many decades absence from the shorelines of UK.